Okay, so I was 23, which is about 43 years ago. And I woke, and I was married at the time, and I said to my then wife, in the morning, I said, I just woke up feeling like my mother must have had an affair because I don't think my dad really is my dad. And she said, oh no, not one of your crazy theories again. They're your parents, they're both your parents. I thought, okay, fine. That's just my imagination. So later that day, I get a letter in the mail, and it says, Dear Mitchell, I've thought about you since 1959. I'm your father, and I have 3 adopted children, and your mother, whose name was Valerie, which happened to be the name of my then wife, has these kids, and she and I we were not allowed to get married. So I thought, oh, this is a practical joke. I have this friend who we used to play practical jokes on each other. So I thought, okay, I'm going to call up this number and say, ha, 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 not very funny. And so I call up the number, and somebody answers. I say, oh yes, I need to speak with Maxwell so-and-so. I didn't even pronounce his last name correctly. And they're like, oh, okay, get on let me get this person. So I said, he gets on the phone, and I said, I think you've made a mistake, thinking I was going to be funny. And the other side of the phone, he said, no, I didn't make a mistake. I know you're my son. I hired private investigators. I have all this documentation. I bribed somebody in the government to get the original records. You're my son. I said, oh, okay. I said, well, the reason I thought you made a mistake, he said, why did you think you made a mistake? I said, well, because I didn't even know I was adopted. And he said, oh gosh, I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, well, listen, you're contacting me after 20-something 3 years. I said, why are you calling me? What do you want? And he said, well, I would just like to get to know you. And I said, okay, well, listen, give me a call, and maybe one day we'll do lunch. And I hung up the phone. And then the phone rang again, and I said, what do you want? And it was my wife. And she says, what do you mean, what do I want? I said, you're not going to believe what just happened. I told her, yeah, I just got a letter, I found out I'm adopted, blah, blah, blah. And she said, I am sick of your practical jokes. And she hangs up on the phone on me. So I said, okay. So that was that, and the phone rings again, and I said, yes, I know it's not a practical joke. And it was my father, my birth father, and he says, I know it's not a practical joke, I'm really your father. And I said, he goes, don't you want to know anything? I said, well, actually I do. I said, so I said, yeah, I want to know a few things. Anyway, long story short, it was a very short conversation. I said, but I want to get the proof. I want to see the proof that you're really my father. So, you'll have to meet me someplace with all the official documentation. And so he agreed to do that, and I flew up to where he lived and saw the documentation. I was like, oh my God, I am in such shock. He's like, well, yeah, because you didn't know you were adopted. I said, no, my birth certificate shows that my mother has been lying about her age all these years. She's really 8 years older than she said she is, and she really looks good for her age. So anyway, long story short, I decided So I thought, okay, well, I've got to tell my parents, my adoptive parents, that I know I'm adopted. But I was really struggling because they were involved in this big property dispute, and it was very stressful. So after 5 days, though, I thought, I just have to tell them, because even though people were telling me, friends were saying, you should be mad at your parents for not telling you were adopted. But that didn't feel right to me, because I knew my parents, my adoptive parents, were very loving, kind, and good people. So I drove up to my mom's house. My parents were divorced, but they were the best divorced couple you ever know, because they stayed friends and spoke every day and all that. But anyway, so I go to my mom's house, and my grandmother happens to be over, and so they're like, what are you doing here? What's going on? And I said, well, sit down, I've got some news. And they're like, what? And I said, well, I thought you should know I'm adopted. Which, of course, they were like, oh, we should have told you. And I said, no, what I realized in all of that, because what I struggled with for that whole week, is I thought, I'm not really who I thought I was. But at the end of the day, I realized I was who I was because of the parents who raised me. So that's my story.